Good morning children and welcome to the class. Let's start with the same lesson, the enemy. In the last class we have seen that how an American soldier who was their enemy was washed away to the doorstep of Saddam. And Saddam was in dilemma. What should he do with the man? If he should put him into the water bag to let him die, or he should hand him over to the army, or being a doctor, he should save the life. So finally, the couple decided to carry the dying man into their house. Now let's see. But the servants, Sada inquired, we must simply tell them that we intend to give him to the police. As indeed we must. Sada, we must think of the children and your position. It would endanger all of us if we did not give this man over as a prisoner of war. Certainly, Sada agreed. I would not think of doing anything else. Then Sada asked his wife that if we should carry the man into our house, then what we will tell our servants? Then the wife, Hannah, suggested that they would tell the servants that after the man would come into sense, they were going to hand him over to the police. And really, he would have to do it. Really, he would have to hand him over to the police. Because it would not be good for their children and for them. The man could put them into dangerous situation if he would be allowed to live there. Then Sada also agreed. Thus agreed together, they lifted the man. He was very light, like a fowl that had been half starved for a long time until it is only feathers and a skeleton. So his arms hanging, they carried him up the steps and into the side door of the house. This door opened into a passage, and down the passage they carried the man towards an empty bedroom. It had been the bedroom of Sadao's father, and since his death it had not been used. So at last the both agreed to the same point, and they together with their combined effort were ready to lift the man. They lifted the man. The body of the man had become very light. It was light in the same way as the fowl which is starved for some days and only a skeleton and the feathers are left in the fowl. The body of the enemy, the American soldier, was also in the same way light. So easily they lifted him. His arms were hanging, and they didn't carry him into their house through the front door. They carried him through the side door. The door led to a passage, and the passage led to an empty room. The room was earlier used by Sadao's father. Sadao's father used to live in this room, but since his death, the room was empty. So, the enemy was brought into that room. Hana went to the wall cupboards and slid back a door and took out a soft quilt. She hesitated. The quilt was covered with flowered silk and the lining was pure white silk. Then Hana went to the cupboard and took out a silk quilt from there. The upper cover of the quilt was of flowered silk and the internal cover was of white silk. So Hana was hesitating to use this quilt for this enemy. He is so dirty, she murmured in distress. Yes, he had better be washed, Sadao agreed. If you will fetch hot water, I will wash him. I cannot be here for you to touch him, she said. We shall have to tell the servants he is here. I'll tell Yumi now. She can leave the children for a few minutes and she can wash him. Hana told that he is very dirty. Sadao also agreed. Sadao also told yes, he is very dirty. So first of all, he should be washed. So Hana, you please go and fetch some hot water. If you can fetch, then I will wash him. Then Hana told angrily, no, you are not going to touch this man. You will tell the servants and I will also tell Yumi and our servants will wash him. Sadao considered a moment. Let it be so, he agreed. You tell Yumi and I will tell the others. But the utter pallor of the man's unconscious face moved him first to stoop and feel his pulse. It was faint, but it was there. He put his hand against the man's cold breast. The heart too was yet alive. He will die unless he is operated on, Sadao said, considering the question is whether he will not die anyway. So Sadao agreed. Sadao told yes, we must tell the servants. But before they could go, Sadao saw the man's face and the man's face had turned pale due to sickness, due to weakness. So Sadao first of all bent and felt the pulse of the man, although the pulse was weak, but still it was there. Then he felt the heartbeat. Heartbeat was also there. Then Sadao told that if the man is not operated, then certainly he is going to die. And the question is that he should not die. Hana cried out in fear. Don't try to save him. What if he should live? What if he should die? Sadao replied. Then Hana cried. Hana was very afraid because the enemy was in their room. So Hana told, no, you are not going to save him. What would happen if the man would be alive? Then in the same tone, Sadao told, what would happen if the man would die? He stood gazing down on the motionless man. This man must have extraordinary vitality, or he would have been dead by now. But then he was very young, perhaps not yet 25. Sadao, seeing the man's face, told that the man had most extraordinary vitality, extraordinary strength. That's why, in spite of the odd condition, hostile condition, in spite of the big powerful waves, in spite of the spiked rocks, and in spite of being shot, the man was yet alive. And he is young also. He is less than 25 years. You mean die from the operation? Hana asked. Yes, Sadao said. Then Hana told, what do you mean to say? Means during operation he may die also. Then Then Sada told, yes, maybe. Hannah considered this doubtfully, and when she did not answer, Sada turned away. At any rate, something must be done with him, he said, and first he must be washed. He went quickly out of the room, and Hannah came behind him. But Hannah had still doubt. Then Sada turned his face from Hannah's side, and Sada told that at any rate, at any cost, something must be done with this man. So the first thing he had to do is that the man's face should be washed. And saying this quickly, he left the room. As soon as he left the room, Hannah also followed him. Why? Because Hannah didn't want to be left with this man. Because after all, he was enemy, whether he was dead or living. Since she had left America, she had never seen any American, and he was not one of those whom Hannah knew in America. Means he was not a familiar man. He was a stranger and he was enemy. So Hannah was afraid to be left alone. That's why she also followed her husband. She turned to the nursery and called Yumi, but the children heard her voice and she had to go in for a moment and smile at them and play with the baby boy, now nearly 3 months old. Over the baby's soft black hair, she motioned with her mouth. Yumi, come with me. I'll put the baby to bed. Yumi replied. He is ready. Then Hannah turned towards the baby's room, the nursery, and called Yumi. But before going to nursery, she thought that as the babies have heard their voice, so she must play with the baby. So she went to her children, and for some time she played with her children. Then she motioned, she signaled, she gave signals, she indicated Yumi, that Yumi, you please come with me. Then Yumi told that first of all she had to put the baby on the bed because baby is ready to sleep. She went with Yumi into the bedroom next to the nursery and stood with a boy in her arms while Yumi spread the sleeping quilts on the floor and laid the baby between them. After that, both Yumi and Hannah went to the bedroom till Yumi was making baby's bed. Hannah was holding the baby. After that, when the bed was ready, the baby was put into sleeping quilt. Then Hannah led the way quickly and softly to the kitchen. The two servants were frightened at what their master had just told them. The old gardener, who was also a house servant, pulled the few hairs on his upper lip. The master ought not to heal the wound of this white man. He said bluntly to Hannah, the white man ought to die. First he was shot, then the sea caught him and wounded him with her rocks. If the master heals what the gun did and what the sea did, they will take revenge on us. After that, Hannah went to the kitchen, and Hannah saw that the servants were frightened. Actually, by that time, the servants were told everything about the prisoner by Shadao. So the servants seemed to be afraid. One of them was the old gardener also. The gardener, except gardening, sometimes used to do household work also. The gardener, in his very clear words, frankly told Hannah that their masters shouldn't do it. It's not fair. Their masters shouldn't save the enemy, shouldn't save this prisoner, because the sea, the gun had tried to kill him. And if their master would save him, then maybe the sea and gun would be angry with them and they would take revenge on them. I'll tell him what you say, Hannah replied courteously. But she herself was also frightened. Although she was not superstitious as the old man was, could it ever be well to help an enemy? Nevertheless, she told Yumi to fetch the hot water and bring it to the room where the white man was. Hannah told courteously, politely, okay. She would tell Sada this thing. But in actual sense, Hannah was also frightened. Hannah was also afraid because he was enemy and it was not fair to keep the enemy in their house. Nevertheless, still, she told Yumi that Yumi, please come with hot water into the white man's room. She went ahead and slid back the partitions. Sada was not yet there. Yumi, following, put down her wooden bucket. Then she went over to the white man. When she saw him, her thick lips folded themselves into stubbornness. I have never washed a white man, she said, and I will not wash so dirty a one now. First of all, Hannah herself went to the room and then following her, Yumi also came. Then Sada was still not there. Sada had not come by that time. Then Yumi put the wooden bucket on the floor and saw the white man's face. Then an expression of stubbornness, obstinacy came on Yumi's face. And Yumi refused to wash the white man's face. Yumi told that never in her life she had washed any white man and so she was not going to do that day also. Hannah cried at her severely, "You will do what your master commands you." There was so fierce a look of resistance upon Yumi's round dull face that Hannah felt unreasonably afraid. After all, if the servants should report something that was not as it happened. "Very well," she said with dignity. "You understand. We only want to bring him to his senses so that we can turn him over as a prisoner." Although Hannah was very angry with the obstinacy, with the disobedience of her maid servant, she wanted to rebuke her, but she was afraid to think that if the servants would report. So she changed her tone and she told politely that actually they didn't want to give him shelter, give the enemy shelter. They were waiting for him to come into senses. As soon as he would come into sense, they would hand him over to the police. "I'll have nothing to do with it," Yumi said. "I am a poor person and it is not my business." Then Yumi told that, "Madam, actually I myself don't want to involve in it. This is not my business. Now what you have to do, you know, but only I don't want to wash his face. That's enough." "Then please," Hannah said gently, "return to your own work." Hannah told, "Okay." Then you go to your own work. Means you go to baby's room. You take care of baby. At once Yumi left the room, but this left Hannah with the white man alone. She might have been too afraid to stay had not her anger at Yumi's stubbornness now sustained her. Now Hannah was alone with the white man. Maybe she would be afraid, but she was not afraid because this time she was more angry than being afraid. She was angry with her maid servant. She was angry with her stubbornness. So there was no room in her mind for being afraid. Stupid Yumi, she muttered fiercely. Is this anything but a man? And a wounded, helpless man. She told to herself. She told that such a stupid lady. If he is anything else, he is only a man. Wounded man, helpless man. In the conviction of her own superiority, she bent impulsively and untied the knotted rugs that kept the white man covered. When she had his breast bare, she dipped the small clean towel that Yumi had brought into the steaming hot water and washed his face carefully. The man's skin, though rough with exposure, was of a fine texture and must have been very blonde when he was a child. And thinking herself superior as she was mistress, so impulsively, suddenly, without caring much, she herself was ready to wash the man's face. So first of all, she untied the knot of the rugs with which the man was covered, wrapped, and when she untied, then she saw the man's breast. Then she started washing the man's face with the clean towel which was brought by Yumi. She dipped the towel into hot water and she washed first of all the face of the man. When the man's face was washed, then she saw that the texture, structure of his face was good. Although due to exposure, due to openness, due to living in an open atmosphere, there were some wounds and some scars, but in spite of that, there was brightness, there was glaze on man's face, and she thought that during his childhood, he must have been a bright child with a golden face. So, that's only for today. Thanks.